Lieutenant James Harlow stamped his feet against the permafrost, watching his breath crystallize in Erebus' thin atmosphere. 3 months on this frozen moon and he still couldn't get warm through reinforced windows, he observed. The refugee encampment, a sprawling collection of prefabricated shelters housing nearly 2,000 survivors of the Center conflict. Camp 37 wasn't a prison. His superiors insisted it was temporary housing until diplomatic channels reopened. James snorted. The razor wire and gun turrets suggested otherwise. Lieutenant incoming transmission called Corporal Wilson from the communications hub. Priority Alpha. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing Colonel Blackwood's stern face. Harlow knew. Directives from command. Resources are stretched thin. We're relocating non-essential refugees to the processing center on Titan. Define non-essential. Stir those without specialized skills or intelligence value. The elderly, widowed, dependents, children without guardians. Camp 37 needs to operate at maximum efficiency. James studied the transfer manifest with growing unease. Nearly 300 names. Sir, Titan's facilities are already overcrowded. And the journey. Are you questioning orders? Lieutenant, no sir. When does transport arrive? 72 hours. Have them ready. The transmission ended abruptly. Later that evening, during his perimeter check, James noticed a slender figure waiting near his quarters. As he approached, she stepped into the light. Tall and graceful, with pale indigo skin that seemed to absorb the moonlight too. Small children huddled behind her legs. He recognized her from the medical bay where she volunteered. Carrara, one of the Lumaduri refugees. Her species possessed a natural bioluminescence barely perceptible now, a sign of poor health or extreme stress. Lieutenant Harlow, she said. Her voice soft but direct, universal translator giving her words an ethereal quality. I saw the list. My children and I are scheduled for relocation. James shifted uncomfortably. I'm sorry. Orders from command. No one returns from Titan processing, she said flatly. Everyone knows this. The children, a boy about 7 and a girl perhaps 5, watched him with large luminous eyes, the color of distant galaxies. No extra limbs or features as mentioned in your inspiration. The Lumidir appeared nearly human except for their indigo skin and eyes that seemed to hold starlight. I can be useful here, Kara continued, desperation edging into her voice. I assist Dr. Patil in the medical unit. I learn quickly. I can cook traditional human meals now. I can. She hesitated, straightening her spine with quiet dignity. I can keep your quarters. I can keep you warm during the long nights. The last words hung between them, heavy with implication. That's not necessary, James replied automatically, though he couldn't deny an unexpected flutter of interest. My children are quick and quiet. Talon helps maintain air filters already. Mira can sort supplies. She stepped closer. Close enough that he could see the faint patterns beneath her skin, constellation-like markings unique to each luminary. Please, we have nothing left. Our world is gone. Don't send us away. James glanced at the children again. Both were thin but alert, watching this exchange with the preternatural stillness of those who had learned that survival sometimes depended on invisibility. Military regulations prohibited fraternization with refugees, but there was a clause seldom invoked allowing officers to claim domestic assistance from among the displaced populations. You understand what people will assume? He asked quietly. I understand survival, she answered, her gaze unwavering. And I understand kindness when I see its possibility. Behind her professional demeanor, James glimpsed something that resonated deep within him, pride bending but not breaking. Determination to protect what little remained of her family. He joined the military to protect the vulnerable, not shuffle them between increasingly hopeless situations. Report to my quarters tomorrow at 800, he said finally. I'll have the paperwork ready. As she turned to leave, the smaller child, Nara, stepped forward impulsively and pressed something into his hand, a small carved stone, polished smooth with the Lumidori symbol for gratitude etched into its surface. That night James stared at his ceiling, the stone cool against his palm, wondering if he'd just saved 3 lives or compromised everything he'd believed about himself. Outside, Erebus, eternal winter hulled against the reinforced walls of Camp 37, a frozen wasteland where perhaps an unexpected warmth might somehow bloom. The first week of their arrangement was an exercise in awkward navigation. James cleared his small second bedroom for Kira's children while she insisted on making a pallet for herself in the living area. Military quarters weren't designed for families, but they adapted. You don't need to sleep on the floor, James said on the third night, finding her arranging blankets. It is appropriate, Kara replied simply. My people believe in maintaining boundaries. Despite his assurances that his offer of protection came without expectations, James noticed How she tensed whenever he moved too quickly wore left invisible scars on everyone. Camp rumors spread faster than the artificial heating could warm the frigid halls. Fellow officers gave knowing smirks. Refugees regarded him with new suspicion or desperate hope that they might find similar arrangements. Lieutenant has gone native. He overheard Sergeant Pierce comment in the mess hall. Lieutenant Commander Vega cornered him after morning briefing. Harlow, about your new domestic situation. Everything's filed properly, James replied stiffly, not questioning that. Vega lowered her voice. Be careful, Blackwood's watching you. Meanwhile, Kara transformed his quarters. Traditional literary textiles appeared on walls, somehow making the sterile room feel warmer. The children maintained perfect nervous silence initially, but gradually revealed their personalities. Talon, serious beyond his years, shadowed James. When he worked on equipment, Earth machines used different principles than ours. The boy observed his indigo fingers tracing circuits with impressive comprehension. Mira remained cautious until discovering James's small collection of paper books. A luxury in space you have. Real stories, she whispered, eyes widening with wonder. One evening, returning exhausted from a double shift, James found dinner waiting, a fusion of Earth and Lumidary cuisine. Kiera had somehow acquired ingredients from both worlds. This is incredible, he said, savoring unfamiliar spices. On my world, sharing food creates connections, she explained, finally sitting when he insisted. My husband was a culinary architect. Before her voice trailed off, that universal experience of grief transcending species. Tell me about him, James said softly as the children listened. Carrara described their life before war, a crystalline city where light was both art and sustenance. Her husband's legendary feasts that drew visitors from distant systems. That night marked a turning point. Carrara spoke more freely afterward, and James shared stories of his own family's farm on Earth, something he rarely discussed with fellow officers. When the children called him Navarric one morning, Kara looked startled. It means unexpected guardian, she translated, embarrassment coloring her features. I'll speak to them. No, James replied, surprised by the warmth spreading through his chest. I don't mind. Outside their quarters, tensions in Camp 37 escalated. Resources dwindled further, and James found himself increasingly at odds with policies he was expected to enforce during their 6th week together. A blizzard knocked out the camp's eastern power grid as engineering teams worked to restore power. James returned to find Kara glowing, the bioluminescence of her species radiating softly from beneath her skin, providing gentle light and surprising warmth. You're beautiful, he said before he could stop himself in the gentle blue illumination. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Vulnerability. Recognized, respected, reciprocated. Later that night with the children asleep, Kira explained, light sharing is intimate among my people, but you needed warmth. James realized two things with startling clarity. He was falling in love with an alien refugee under his protection, and if anyone discovered the depth of his feelings, they would all be in grave danger. The inspection came without warning. James was in the command center when alarms blared, not external threats but internal security protocols. Engaging surprise compliance check, announced Colonel Blackwood, materializing with a team of security officers. All quarters, all documentation. James felt the blood drain from his face. He'd falsified Kira's skills assessment to qualify her as essential personnel, nothing that would withstand serious scrutiny. He tried to reach her through his communicator, no response. By the time he reached their quarters, security officers were already inside. Kara stood rigid with dignity despite her fear. The children clinging to her legs both appeared dimmer than usual, their natural luminescence fading with distress. Lieutenant Harlow, Blackwood said coolly, your assistant seems to have misrepresented her qualifications. The medical skills on her application are exaggerated. I take full responsibility, James began. Indeed you will. Blackwood gestured at a data pad. Falsifying refugee documentation is a serious offense, and these living arrangements, he glanced meaningfully at the evidence of shared living spaces. Sir, with respect, you're relieved of duty. Pending investigation, Lieutenant. The refugees will be processed according to protocol. The children began weeping softly as security officers moved forward. Mira reached for James with desperate little hands. No. Talon shouted, breaking his usual reserve. Narek promised. The word hung in the air, not just its meaning but the emotion behind it. Family, protection, trust. In that moment, James made his decision in one fluid motion. He disabled the nearest security officer, seized his weapon, and positioned himself between the others and Kara's family. We're leaving, he stated flatly. No one follows. This is treason. Harlow, Blackwood snarled. No. Sir, this is humanity. James backed them toward the door. Kiera, get emergency packs. They moved swiftly through service corridors. James security clearance still active behind them. Alarms blared. Ahead lay uncertainty. The northern maintenance tunnels. James instructed as they reached a junction. They lead to the old mining outposts. Those areas aren't pressurized, protested Kiera, clutching the children close. Precisely why they won't expect us to go there. They had just reached the maintenance bay when another complication appeared. 3 tall Lumidari in formal attire, their skin patterns marked with official insignia. Carrara Velsorin, the leader, addressed her formally. The Preservation Council has authorized retrieval of your offspring for proper cultural integration. James raised his weapon, but Kara placed a restraining hand on his arm. My children remain with me, she declared, her voice steady despite her fear. And with their chosen Navik you have been compromised by human influence. The council representative insisted the purity of our survivors must be maintained. The impasse was broken by the sound of approaching security forces. In the moment of distraction they fled toward the maintenance airlock. The bizarre alliance of human military and Lumidari council forced to temporarily cooperate in pursuit. James sealed the airlock behind them and distributed emergency oxygen units. The old mining tunnel stretched before them, dark, dangerous, leading to the lawless outskirts where deserters, smugglers, and those who fell between the cracks of official policy somehow survived. I can't go back now, James realized aloud. We're fugitives. Caird's luminous strength in providing light in the darkness. You chose us over everything. Family isn't about species, he replied, lifting Mira into his arms as they began their journey into the unknown. It's about who you're willing to fight for. The abandoned mining outpost of Freehold sprawled across Erebus' northern ridge, a haphazard collection of structures built by those who existed outside official jurisdiction. Deserters, displaced refugees, smugglers, and idealists had created a precarious society where species mattered less than skills and loyalty. After 2 weeks in hiding, James and Kiera had secured basic shelter in exchange for his security expertise and her medical knowledge. The children adapted with surprising resilience, Talon's technical abilities earning respect among the settlement's engineers. They're scanning the western quadrant today, reported Nadia, a former Alliance pilot who monitored military communications. Getting closer, James nodded grimly. The joint human Lumidari search parties hadn't given up. Combined with winter storms intensifying across the moon's surface, their situation grew increasingly precarious that evening as Kira's bioluminescence provided gentle light for their sparse dwelling. James studied worn maps of the region. The supply vessel that trades with Freehold leaves tomorrow, he noted. We could attempt passage to the outer colonies. Kara's light dimmed slightly. More running, more hiding until we find somewhere safe. Is there such a place for people like us? She asked, the patterns beneath her skin shifting with emotion. Not human enough, not Lumidari enough. James pulled her close, feeling the now familiar coolness of her skin warming against as we define who we are. No one else. They were interrupted by commotion outside, shouts, running footsteps. James grabbed his makeshift weapon as the door burst open. Talon rushed in, breathless military vessels, council representatives. They've surrounded Freehold. Evacuation alarms sounded across the settlement. Kira gathered Mira as they prepared to flee deeper into the maze of abandoned mines. But when they reached the central plaza they found escape routes already blocked. Colonel Blackwood's amplified voice echoed through the settlement. This is your only warning, surrender. The fugitives' luminescent council representatives stood alongside military personnel, an unholy alliance bound by shared rigidity. To their surprise, Freehold's residents formed a protective barrier around them. They're under settlement protection, announced Nadia, stepping forward. Freehold has its own laws. This is military jurisdiction, Blackwood countered. And these children are Lumidari jurisdiction, added the council leader. The standoff escalated, weapons appearing on all sides. Freehold residents, human and non-human alike, stood firm despite being outnumbered. Enough, James said, finally stepping forward with Karev beside him, the children between them. This isn't their fight. Their small family stood exposed in the plaza facing the combined forces that sought to separate them. Lieutenant Harlow, Blackwood began, you violated multiple regulations. I've honored what those regulations should protect. James interrupted, the dignity of all sentient beings, the right to family. The Lumidari council representative addressed Carrara. Your children belong with their kind. They are with their kind, Carrara replied, her luminescence brightening with determination. Family transcends biology. James stepped forward. You claim to protect culture and security, but what Are you protecting them so they can live divided so they can learn that differences mean distance? He gestured around at Freehold's diverse inhabitants, or so they can build something new? The confrontation might have ended in bloodshed if not for an unexpected arrival. Lieutenant Commander Vega descended from a smaller shuttle accompanied by representatives from the newly formed Interspecies Diplomatic Court. Colonel Blackwood, she announced formally, the Alliance has authorized a pilot program for integration. Camp 37 is being reorganized under joint governance. She nodded toward James and Kara. With these four as our test case, impossible, sputtered Blackwood. Already approved, Vega countered, displaying official authorization. The war changed everything, including what family means now. The Lumidori representatives conferred among themselves, their skin patterns shifting in their silent communication. Finally, their leader addressed Kiera directly. Your light bond with the human is genuine, he acknowledged reluctantly. Our traditions recognize such connections even across species. The Council will not separate what the great light has joined. Hours later, as diplomatic details were negotiated, James and Kiera stood at the edge of Freehold, watching Erebus's weak sun rise over the frozen landscape. The children slept peacefully nearby, exhausted from the night's events. What happens now? Carrara asked softly. We build something new, James replied, taking her hand and watching light patterns dance where their skin touched. Not human, not luminary, just us, she repeated, leaning against him as her natural light harmonized with his body's warmth. Different natures finding balance in the distance. Representatives of two worlds argued over details and protocols. But here, in this moment between chaos and order, a family created by choice rather than circumstance had already found its own resolution, proving that sometimes the deepest warmth grows in the coldest places and light shines brightest against the darkness of space. By the third month, their lives had settled into rhythms that felt dangerously close to normal. James found himself rushing back to his quarters after shifts, drawn by the warmth that had nothing to do with the heating systems and everything to do with three indigo-skinned individuals who waited for him. The children no longer hid when he entered. Talon had developed an insatiable curiosity about Earth technology, peppering James with questions about everything from plasma rifles to communication arrays. Mira, still shy but increasingly animated, created intricate drawings that blended Lumidari mythology with human fairy tales James had shared. This is us, she explained one evening, showing him a picture of four figures standing beneath twin moons, the tallest figure clearly. James stood protectively beside the others, a strange light connecting them all. It's beautiful, he said, genuinely moved. What's this light between us? Soul threads, Kara answered softly. From where she prepared their evening meal. In our culture, we believe visible light is merely the physical manifestation of deeper connections. Their eyes met across the room, and James felt that invisible thread between them pull tighter each day. Maintaining professional distance became more difficult each night. After the children slept, their conversation stretched longer, moving from practical matters to deeply personal ones. Tell me about your world, he asked one evening. As they sat in the small living area, the lights dimmed to conserve power during Erebus' brutal night cycle. Carrara's natural luminous pulsed gently beneath her skin as she spoke of crystal cities that caught and refracted light, of ceremonies where Lumidori would gather to share their inner radiance, creating spectacular auroras visible from space. Our bioluminescence responds to emotional states, she explained, the patterns beneath her skin shifting like constellations. Joy, fear, affection, all have their own light signatures. What does this pattern mean? James asked, gesturing to the swirling patterns currently visible along her forearms. She hesitated, her luminescence briefly flickering brighter. It's complex. When we feel drawn to another, when we wish to be closer. The admission hung between them, charged with possibilities neither had dared acknowledge. Is that why you glow more brightly when we talk at night? He asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. Yes, she admitted, my light recognizes something in you that calls to it. That night marked a turning point when their hands brushed as she passed him a data pad. Neither pulled away. The contact sent a visible ripple of light beneath her skin, patterns spiraling outward from the point of connection. I've never seen that before, James murmured, fascinated. It's rare, she acknowledged, even among my own kind. The next morning, rumors circulated through Camp 37 like wildfire. Other officers made barely concealed comments about getting friendly with the refugees. James ignored them, but he noticed Carrara received cold stars from both humans and fellow Lumidari when she worked in the medical bay. They believe I betrayed our customs, she explained when he asked. Lumidori tradition holds that widows should remain in mourning for 3 cycles to show interest in another. Especially a human, are you in mourning? He asked gently, her eyes those deep. Galaxy-filled orbs met his eye. Honored my husband, I grieved him, but survival demands we adapt. In my heart she placed a hand over her chest where a soft glow pulsed. My heart moves forward even when tradition demands stillness. Their first kiss came unexpectedly during a camp-wide power failure. The emergency systems bathed the corridors in red warning lights as James raced back to his quarters. Inside he found Kiera using her natural luminous to provide light for the frightened children, her entire body glowing with a gentle blue radiance. You're beautiful, he whispered, the words escaping before he could censor them. She looked up startled, and the light beneath her skin pulsed brighter, patterns shifting into what he now recognized as pleasure and affection. Without thinking he crossed to her, cupped her face in his hands and pressed his lips against hers. The difference in their physiologies made the experience uniquely intoxicating. Her skin was cooler than a human's but warmed quickly against his. Where their lips met, her luminescence brightened to an almost blinding intensity, casting their shadows across the walls. When they separated, both were breathing heavily, staring at each other in wonder and alarm at what they'd just initiated. The children, she whispered, glancing toward the bedroom. Asleep, he assured her, having checked the small room on his way. And Kiera, I know this is complicated. Complicated? She gave a soft laugh. A human officer and an alien refugee with two children hiding in plain sight on a frozen moon while two species fight for survival. Yes, I would say complicated describes our situation, but her light told a different story, pulsing in rhythm with her quickened heartbeats, the patterns beneath her skin forming intricate designs he'd never seen before. What does this mean? He asked, tracing a finger along a particularly bright constellation on her wrist. It means despite every reason not to, I am falling in love with you, she whispered, and it terrifies me. In the days that followed, they navigated their evolving relationship with cautious joy, secret touches in passing, coded words with double meanings. After the children slept, they explored each other with wonder. Human warmth meeting literary light in an intimate dance of discovery. Kira taught him to read the patterns of her luminescence, a language more honest than words. In turn, he showed her how human touch could create its own kind of light, invisible but equally powerful. There nights became a sanctuary, but daytime brought increasing danger. Lieutenant Commander Vega cornered James after a security briefing. Blackwood's watching you, she warned. He's implemented new surveillance protocols in the residential sectors. Whatever you're doing with your domestic assistant, be more careful. That same day, Kara returned from the medical bay, visibly distressed, her luminescence dimmed to almost nothing. Representatives from the Lumidori Preservation Council have arrived, she explained, voice tight with fear. They're documenting all surviving children for cultural preservation. They believe those without proper limitary guidance should be relocated to cultural centers. They can't take your children, James insisted. You have legal custody under military governance. Our council doesn't recognize military authority over Lumidori families, she countered. Especially those they deem compromised. How her eyes met his, pain evident in their depths. Those who have formed inappropriate attachments to other species, those whose light patterns show mixing. That night their love-making carried an edge of desperation. Every touch, every kiss seemed weighted with the knowledge that forces beyond their control were converging to tear them apart. As they lay entwined afterward, her bioluminescence wrapped them both in a soft glow that made the harsh military quarters feel like somewhere sacred. If they try to separate us, James whispered against her neck where her pulse point flickered with quickened light. Well, find a way out together. How? She asked, tracing the contours of his face with cool fingers that left trails of faint luminescence on his skin. Where could we possibly go? Where both our worlds wouldn't hunt us down. I don't know, he admitted, but I know I can't lose you any of you. You've become my home in a way no place ever has. As if sensing the tension, Talon appeared in the doorway, his small form silhouetted against the darkness. They separated quickly, but not before the boy had surely noticed their intimate position. Talon, Kara began reaching for her clothes. The other children said, you were becoming nursemaid. The boy said directly, using the term he'd adopted for James. They said we would be sent away because of it. James felt cold dread settle in his stomach. If the children were talking, adults were surely listening. Come here, he said softly, patting the edge of the bed. Once they were both decent, the boy approached cautiously. Despite months of growing familiarity, this was clearly new territory for all of them. No one is sending you away, James promised, though he knew the promise might be beyond his power to keep. And yes, your mother and I have grown close. Does that make you our father now? Talon asked with the blunt Directness of children everywhere. James looked at Kara, whose luminescence had brightened with emotion. I don't know what I am, he answered honestly, but I know I love your mother and I love you, and Mira, whatever happens I will fight to keep us together. Later that night, with the children finally asleep and Kara resting against his chest, James stared at the ceiling, pondering impossible choices and unlikely escapes. Beyond their quarters he could feel the machinery of both human and Lumidori bureaucracy grinding into motion, each determined to enforce their vision of proper order. Neither would approve of the family they'd built in defiance of regulations and traditions. Neither would understand how love could bridge not just cultural divides but biological ones. We should run, he whispered into the darkness, before they come for us. Karara's light pulsed once bright and determined in the darkness. Then we run, she agreed simply. Together